Yo, Enzo Maresca is the new manager of Chelsea Football Club, and in this video I'm going to outline why Chelsea chose him, his philosophy and tactical approach, the similarities and differences between him and some other top European coaches, and the weaknesses that all of his sides have possessed. At the time of recording, Chelsea have played their first two pre-season games against Wrexham and Celtic, and a lot of Chelsea fans are already starting to question Maresca's suitability for the job. And I will speak about this towards the end of the video, but this video is primarily about Enzo Maresca and his footballing philosophy. I have been working on this video for a few weeks, and I plan to include lots of visuals in the form of tactics boards to demonstrate some of the concepts that I'm going to discuss. But by the time I would have finished editing the video, Chelsea would have already played another pre-season game. So I'm reluctantly opting to go without them for this video to ensure that it's as up to date as possible. Enzo Maresca was convinced to become a coach by former Manchester City and West Ham manager Manuel Pellegrini. And Maresca has been described as possession obsessed, favouring a slow and more controlled build-up. He is known to appreciate the finer details of the game. His coaching thesis was actually entitled Football and Chess, emphasising positional play, strategy and counter moves. Maresca, like Arne Slot, another Pep Guardiola acolyte, aims to create numerical superiority in every part of the pitch as the ball is progressed from his team's defensive third to the other end of the pitch. During his time in charge of Parma, Manchester City's elite development squad, and Leicester City, Maresca mostly opted for either a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 formation. However, his teams tend to be structurally very fluid and adopt a different structure depending on the phase of play. Let's start with the build-up phase. Maresca likes his sides to build up in a box or a lopsided box. It's lopsided because he typically favours building up in a 3-2-5 structure with one of the fullbacks inverting into midfield to play as one of the double pivots. In reality, Maresca's sides actually build up in more of a 4-2-5 as the goalkeeper steps in beside one of the central defenders and the other central defender shuffles across to replace the inverting fullback. This allows his teams to keep forward the back and ensuring that they can maintain that numerical superiority over the opposition, and to ensure they have plenty of pathways in which they can play out to ensure that they can progress the ball into the next phase. For his brief spell in charge of Parma in the Italian second division, both of his fullbacks inverted into midfield, and this is an approach we seen last season with Ange Postecoglou at Spurs. Maresca's sides, much like his fellow Italian and former teammate Roberto De Zerbi's sides, like to bait the press, and his goalkeepers have always played a key role in ensuring that they can do this effectively. This is probably why Chelsea opted to sign 22-year-old Danish goalkeeper Philip Jorgensen from Villarreal. At the moment, I don't think there's much between him and Robert Sanchez, who at one stage last season actually had the highest pass success rate of all Premier League goalkeepers. Now, I'm aware that's not the most valid metric for constructing a holistic view of a goalkeeper's ball-playing capabilities, but I still thought it was interesting enough to mention in this video. Moving further up the pitch, having at least one of your fullbacks inverted into midfield means that one or both of the eights, depending on the formation, can then push forward into those half spaces and inside channels. Given the width that's been provided by the asymmetric fullbacks, in theory these eights will be able to pick up the ball in dangerous spaces with no shortage of options ahead of them. If the opposition's midfielders track these runs and nullify the threats of these eights, the central midfield unit with the inverted fullback can then dominate the ball, and this works, at least in theory, to ensure that Maresca's sides dominate possession. In this phase, Maresca's wide players can also attack inwards, adding to the central overload and providing a genuine goal threat. At the top end of the pitch, the striker will often drop deep at times, again to help ensure that they have numerical superiority. However, they don't really play like a false nine. The striker plays primarily what we would call a traditional number 9, just with lots of clever movement and touches. I actually thought that 18-year-old Marc Guillot played this position really well, albeit against Wrexham. His work rate was excellent, he had lots of intelligent movement, and occasionally he dropped deep into the midfield to provide a passing option when it was needed. That being said, I do think that Christopher Nkunku is tailor-made to play in this highly specialised position going forward. Maresca's teams have all been positionally flexible, creating space by rotating positions, especially between the 6, the 2 8s and the inverting fullback. This means that his sides are constantly asking questions of the opposition. Do you track the runner and leave your natural positioning? Or do you stay in your defensive shape and let the player run free? The aforementioned asymmetric fullbacks is again very similar to the likes of Pep Guardiola and Arne Slot and how they like to set up. All of these managers prioritise attacking in central areas, so it's really important that you have two wide players responsible for hugging the touchline and stretching the opposition. One of these players lines out as a fullback and the other as a winger, because the fullback on the opposite side will be inverting into midfield, as mentioned earlier. What about when his sides don't have the ball? Once his teams lose possession, they look to be super aggressive without the ball, typically going man to man in that initial intense press. Maresca, similar to the likes of Jurgen Klopp and Jan Gasperini, believes that counter-pressing deep in the opposition is one of the best ways to create high-quality chances. At the basis of this press is a 3-2 formation, including the inverted fullback into midfield, and this creates really good conditions for managing defensive transitions, and it means the opposition are really struggle to progress the ball through the middle of the pitch. And this is another similarity between ENZO Maresca and new Liverpool head coach Arne Slot. Maresca's sides, however, look to lock the ball on one side of the pitch, with the team shuffling across to the side where the ball is to try and snuff out the opposition's advancements as early as possible. This helps create numerical superiorities in defensive situations, decreasing the risk of really dangerous 1v1 situations. After this initial phase of intense pressure, they do eventually drop into a 4-4-2 or a 4-1-4-1 formation, depending on the structure that the opposition are attacking in. So what are the weaknesses from a tactical perspective? Well, first, and we've already had a glimpse of this in pre-season, his teams have had issues when pressed well. His teams have also been especially vulnerable down the side that's vacated by the inverting fullback. And given the fashion in which his teams play out from the back, individual errors can be fatal. His obsession with the finer details also paradoxically can lead to his teams looking a bit disorganised and ragged at times. Some managers like to simplify the game for their players, but Maresca is certainly not one of those coaches. He is quite dogmatic in his approach, and he will not compromise on his philosophy. This could be an issue in the Premier League, as tactical flexibility is a must when you're competing against some of the best coaches and players in the world. Maresca was sacked by Parma in Serie B after just 13 games for struggling to get his concepts across to a very young side that had just signed 14 new players, which is not totally different from the situation that he's inheriting at Chelsea. Although he did have an impressive season with Leicester in the Championship last year, he did arguably have the best squad of players in the league. When analysing this younger generation of coaches, they always seem super exciting on paper, but can they match the theory with substance and results? I have no doubt that ENZO Maresca is a very capable coach, but can he refine and adapt his methods at the highest level? And can he manage a club like Chelsea where everything that he does will be micro-analysed by fellow managers and myopic pundits? Only time will tell. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please do give the video a like if you've learned anything new, and subscribe for more football related content just like this. Lastly, Chelsea fans, please let me know what you think of ENZO Maresca's philosophy and tactical approach. And if you're worried about your club's start to pre-season, does it really matter, or do you think that there's already signs that this isn't going to end well for the Italian?